Welcome to Keep What You Earn, your judgment and jargon free zone for entrepreneurs of all levels. Get ready to learn how to scale your business, save money in taxes, and create a business that grows your wealth. If it feels like the financial side of business is like eating your vegetables, well, then think of this podcast as the ranch dressing to make the process a little more enjoyable. My name is Shannon Weinstein. I'm a CPA and business owner on a mission to simplify money and empower others through knowledge. I hope this episode inspires you to take action, but remember that the information we share is for educational purposes only and is not individual tax advice. Now that we got that out of the way, let's start the show. Many times when you think about business ownership and entrepreneurship, you're not thinking about any type of spirituality, identity, psychology, deeper purpose. It's usually about, okay, how can I make money selling a widget and operationalize all these things? And a lot of us think that way. A lot of us think on the surface level on how to get shit done, but not who we have to become in order to reach that next level of greatness, that next purpose, that next mission. Otherwise, we are on a road to nowhere. If you've listened to my past episode with Brian Lubin, this is a great example, right? It's what is your actual goal? Who do you want to become? How do you want to serve? And then what do you have to do to assume that identity? And I'm really excited to welcome onto the show today Anthony Trucks. Anthony is a former NFL player, but now a transformational identity shift coach. Now, you may not understand what exactly that means, but I assure you that when you hear his story, you'll not only come to understand it, you'll also realize why a transformational shift is actually what your life is missing to reach your full potential and to make sure you're always operating at peak performance. So, when we talk to Anthony, it's all about adopting this identity. It's about shedding the ego. It's about doing what he calls the dark work. And I think this is such a great episode, whether you are a mindset focused person or you're like me and more strategy focused. I got a lot out of this conversation when you extract the way you want to contextualize it, the way you want to apply this in your own life as an entrepreneur, as a parent, as a child, as a family member, as a partner. You can apply this and really think about how you could do some of your own dark work and whether you want help with that. In which case, listen all the way through to hear how to work with Anthony. But I'm so excited to welcome Anthony onto the show, hear more of his story, and see how he can help reveal the dark work that needs to get done to help you in entrepreneurship, finances, and family and life. Anthony, welcome. I'm so excited to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Of course. Now, for those who don't know you, could you just say a little bit about yourself? Say hi to everyone listening.
Hi, everyone listening. My name is Anthony Trucks. I'm a former NFL athlete, American Ninja Warrior, and NBC, but I'm also a speaker, author, and a coach. And I teach people how to do the dark work to make shift happen. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I'm a man of God, and I love to go to the world and just do weird stuff and see what happens.
I love that. So, one thing I love about you and your content, Anthony, is how empowering it is and how, you have this long list of accomplishments, what people would perceive as really successful, but it wasn't always that way. And I love that you're so open about sharing kind of the roots underneath the tree that we see. Can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about your story and just unpack a little for our audience who aren't familiar with it?
Yeah, no idea who is this guy on here talking?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was a kid that was given away at 3 years old in the foster care, and so I entered a world where statistically I was supposed to do a lot worse. If you look at any prison in America, 75% of the inmates are former foster kids like me. Half the homeless population, less than 1% of us graduate from college, so we're not usually set up to do very well. And I was heading that direction, bounced around between 6 different houses, a lot of heinous, weird stuff took place. But at a certain age, 6 years old, I landed in my forever home, we'll call it. Wasn't adopted for another 8 years, but was eventually adopted at 14 by a very poor, all-white family and had to navigate this idea of who in the world am I? Where do I fit? And so it took a lot of years, but I tried my hand at stuff that I want to get good at, sucked like we usually do at the beginning of something, found a way to dive back in and get great at it, which was football for me. Turned into a football scholarship. Life opened up, had a kid at 20 years old, then my dad at 20 years old, my biological father, and then progressed from there to play college football to the NFL. NFL was 3 years. NFL stands for not for long. Came in, got hurt, got out, and then had 2 more kids at my high school sweetheart, and then our life fell apart. We were divorced, all hell broke loose, man. It was the big, big dark place, we'll call it, for 3 years. Unfortunately, my mom passed from multiple sclerosis after a 17-year battle with it, and it kinda woke me up to fix my life, and so I fixed my life and found myself crossing some finish lines to the extent of I remarried my ex-wife after 3 years divorce and everything fell apart, and got to a point where I crossed enough finish lines that I felt comfortable turning around and telling other people how to kind of run the race a little bit better than I had the first time through. And it's turned into an amazing business where I get to teach people about identity because I do not believe you can have a dream where you can achieve a dream above your current identity. You won't attain it, you won't sustain it. But if you can elevate your identity to a certain level, you can have anything you desire. So that's the work I do in the world.
I love it. And if you could talk to your, let's say, I'm trying to get the timeline right, but maybe like 10-year-old self
Yeah.
now, what would you tell him? Because there's so much that happened between that time frame.
10-year-old self.
If you could give your 10-year-old Anthony a quick, like, you could go back and like the ghost of Christmas past, right? Go back and say something to him. What would you tell him?
I first off tell him to take a shower. He was a stinky kid in school. Oh, I'm 100% dead serious. I was a stinky kid in class, no joke. Had afro. I didn't take. I hated showers. I wore the same t-shirt anyways. That was the first thing. Second, I'd say stop stealing stuff. Boy was a klepto. He used to take everything. He would go to Walmart and come home with like weird old people brooches because it's like it just looked shiny. I'm telling you, it was weird. I think that I don't know what it was, but like my foster care years, like it was like this weird little dude inside the body, man. The other thing I would tell him, like, it's not your fault, man. I think there was this thought that, I'd done something wrong, which is why my mom gave me away. And so because of that, I was always feeling guilty and like I messed my life up. But really it wasn't my fault. And I think if I go back and tell him to stop that feeling, it wouldn't have, kind of, I think, eroded away his self-confidence for as long as it did. So he might have accomplished more earlier.
That's a really, really good piece of advice. And what would you say? So you mentioned you do the dark work. For
Yeah.
those listening who've never heard this phrase before, can you just kind of unpack what that means for you and how you share that with the world?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, dark work is, let's just call it this way. If the goal is to elevate your identity, you must do something to elevate the identity. And that's how you shine in the light when people see you. That's how you're operating. Your identity is who you are when you're not thinking about who you are. And I believe you have to do work in the dark to shine in the light. And so I found myself in a situation at 15 years old where like I wanted to be great at football, that thing I'd mentioned, but I wasn't very good. I had to figure out how to get good. And it was these things that I did that were behind the scenes that were not celebrated. They were not motivated by teammates. Actually, I was ridiculed. I was, made fun of. People misunderstood what I was doing. My family was an athlete. So they're like, what's this guy doing in the house catching a football every day? Right. So I did these things, but because of that stuff I did in the dark, I emerged differently later into the light. And what I tell people is there's this certain kind of identity you want to adapt to or pretty much elevate to. I call it a dominator's identity. And people get that and go, oh, that's very aggressive. And I go, well, to an extent, because dominate means to be in control of, right? And so I can dominate opposition, but I can also dominate we'll call it the weak parts of myself. I can dominate the part that wants to stay in bed and hit the snooze. I can dominate a meditation routine, right? Be in control of that. So the idea is I can do it softly. However, when I do that enough and I have that identity, there's a mentality behind that identity. That dominator's identity has a mentality of I have done too much work in the dark to lose in the light. When I play with this defining moment mentality means when I show up to life in moments that are going to matter the most, I've worked too hard in the past in the areas you didn't see to lose what I desire or have worked for in this light here. And when you can live with that as an embodiment, like when it emanates from your soul, you get vastly more of life than anybody else can.
Completely agree. And what would you say about this? I know we always hear about staying in positivity,
Mm.
persevering, right? Trying to find the good in everything, living in gratitude, which is all well and good. But do you feel like it also masks the dark work that has to happen, or that people will bypass the dark work? Just it's just hard to do, or it's just something that's just deeper and deeper and deeper that they can't address? What do you think is holding people back from really getting to that place?
I think there's a couple things. One is not having faith from past failures. I think there's this idea that if I dive back in and I do this, then how's it going to be different than last time? And what I notice when that kind of comes to the conversation, I go, well, last time when you faced a situation, did you, in true honesty, did you lean into the difficulty or did you find a way to make it easier? And people
Ooh,
go, well, no, I did hard. Well, did you? Because if, for example, if you were to say I did it, you would immediately go, no, I did that work without your face would show it, right? So people go like, well, I think you're thinking about it. If you have to think about it, you didn't do it, which is okay. It's not that's the worst part of the world, but I go, when you get to the point of leaning in, it's like the harder the dark work, the greater the return. And if you realize that there's an opportunity to do harder work, you can have a greater return. So first off, it's like, ask yourself genuinely, did you at any point in time pull back from the difficulty? Did you find a way to make it easier? Did you lighten the load on yourself? And if you know that you didn't, you wouldn't be asking the question in the first place, right? But if you can honestly go, okay, I did, then that should give you a little bit of a poke to the ego because you go, oh, I could have done more. But also it goes, there's now room to grow. And so at that point, I can step back into it. And then all of the other parts of it go with the work you do being the right work. We talk about respecting the lights, the first part of the process of going through what I call a dark work experience. If you think about the identity we're talking about, there's a neurological and a psychological wiring to your identity in a tangible world, we'll call it. And that wiring is only from one thing, experience. It's the only way you get, that's the only way you're wired. If a dog, I saw a video of a guy yesterday running away from this little itty bitty 8-pound dog, right? Which tells me that his experience in the past wired him to be fearful of dogs. Whereas if I never got bit by a dog or anything, I would have the same experience. So he identifies in a certain way because of that experience. Now, how do you get there? It's the dark work you do. And so for me, when I look at it, is if you're doing the work properly, you're going to get a return you desire. Or you could do the improper, really hard, dark work and never get the outcome or result and go, it's not worth it. It never pans out. So respecting the lights going, I respect what this is. Then you must do what I call design your dark. Like intentionally design who you want to become. You can do it a lot of different ways. We have a whole process we go through, but really it's going, am I doing the genuine stuff that I need to do? Because if not, you could spend the next 5 years working yourself to the bone doing somebody else's work and never getting the result that you need because you weren't plugging your holes. And then after that, I call you have to emerge, like which means if you've done the work, it's time to show it to the light. Like there are a lot of people that'll do the work, but when it comes to the moment to show it, they crumble. And so then all of a sudden they go, it was a waste of time. No, it wasn't a waste. You just didn't draw on your darkness. They go, what do you mean? I go, well, there's a dark part of you that when these moments happen and there's this, everything's in a line. If you look at athletes when the game's in a line, they hunker down. There's something in their eyes. It's an intensity and this aggression. It's not evil, but it's like this place they pull from because they know they've done some things. And so when you can get to that intense moment and take it serious, understand the importance of it, and draw on your darkness, there's a mentality of, I don't lose. You don't win. I've done this already. I've done too much work to lose in this light. And when you can draw on the darkness in the moments that it matters, now you have the results you desire. That's what I think is missing for a lot of people nowadays is they're either doing not enough dark work or not the right dark work.
Have you seen this either firsthand through your experience or through your clients or really through observation?
Myself
Have
for
you
sure.
seen this apply to finances and money in a certain way? I know
Of
our audience is, I mean, so here's an example, right? This is how I see it on the surface level, right? Is a lot of people come to me and they'll say, "Well, I have a bunch of these IRS letters stacking up in the corner." I
Mhm.
actually asked a client, for example, to send me a picture of their IRS letter. What did they send me? Picture of a closed envelope. They
Oh,
didn't
no.
even open it.
That's
So
on
there's a ton of fear. There's a ton of wiring, as you put it, in their identity
yeah.
around money. Can you
Mhm.
just specifically apply a lot of what you just said in the context of money and talk about what you've seen either from clients or yourself?
Yeah, so this is one of those questions no one's ever asked me to do before, which I love. We were talking before this episode came on, guys. She's like, "What's something no one's asked you before?" I'm like, "I don't know. We've got one. Here we go." So you're gonna get
Fantastic.
my brain in real time. So I find if I go back to Anthony back in the day, I grew up poor. Like so, for me, the mentality was like, money isn't something that's easy to get. It's very, very, very hard. And the people who have the money are bad people, right? So that was the first part for me of like my dark
Yes.
navigating that. And then also, I believe your identity is tied to a level of income to where if you have too much, you feel uncomfortable, it somehow escapes your bank account. That's why I believe that the reason people win the lottery and go broke quickly after is they don't identify as a person with that many zeros in their bank account. So they look at it and go, this is uncomfortable. How do I feel comfortable again? Without consciously processing this, the money disappears little by little by little by little. Then they're back to a level of comfort, which is what they had before. It's not an accident. And so I that part of me that goes, I had to navigate well, no, great people, good, amazing humans do have money. It's the first part of my dark work to accept that and own that because I was like, oh, I met a lot of millionaires. They're not evil. They don't have horns. Okay. Because if you see them as evil, you will not become evil. So you won't do what must be done to get that and to navigate that portion. Then you start getting to the point of making money. I've definitely had money, played in the NFL. After the NFL, oh, I was broke. I was in a 500 square foot studio apartment. And there is a part of your ego because it's the one thing that we all in society have to function with is money. So if you look at money as the thing that ties to your sense of self, part of your identity, Well, when you don't have it, you don't just feel broke, you feel like you are nobody. You feel like you don't as a human being. And so to separate yourself, the other part of the dark work you must do is go, you know what? I do not care how anybody views me based on what my bank account says. I'm not gonna to hold myself to a standard that is always shifting and moving because the hard part is the scale of what makes you good or bad or more money, less money. It is not set. And if you are consistently outsourcing your sense of confidence and self-esteem to a number in a bank account, then what happens is you're never going to feel good enough. Because there could be a guy right now who's got, I got $100 million, and somebody else goes, I got 2 billion. Oh, like it
Yeah.
can happen. And so the idea is like, well, if you don't worry about that, and you're not worried about the comparison, you do your own work and go, I'm great as I am. I'm a solid human. It doesn't matter what you have in a bank account. Whatever makes you happy, it gives you freedom and control. By all means, do that. And if somebody else walks along and goes, you can make more, you're right. I could make more. But guess what? I love my life. Like that can be how you flow. But there is a part of us that has to do that dark work, which part of it is in the money realm is being okay, saying, like, look, I got a problem. I buy too many, packs of popcorn, or I'm investing in the wrong things, or I blew a bunch of money doing stupid stuff. Own that. And because
Yeah.
if you can separate yourself from the ego of having to look great, now what happens is you open the doors to give yourself permission to improve in an area. If you cover it up and you hide it, you'll never do the right dark work. So you'll always have the same problem. But if you open the doors and go, all right, ego takes a hit, but here's what I must have somebody see, then that person can now help you. Now you can go, okay, great. I got to stop doing this, start doing this, save more, invest more, which means learn more, get better partners with money, have somebody help me manage my money, like whatever it might be. Do these things to where now you can go, okay, cool. Maybe it's 2 years, maybe it's three, maybe it's 5 years, but at some point, you feel that sense of confidence you see on other people that have the money you want. Like there's a different flow. And then you can look back at it and you realize at the end of the race, when you've got to a great place, it doesn't matter where the race started. No one cares. Like, but get to that part by starting the process in the first place. If you never do, you're going to stay in that funky place for a lifetime.
Exactly. And the dark work isn't the budget. It's more about its identity. It's the who do you have to become to change the wiring in a sense, or at least to address it, acknowledge it, look it in the eye and say, okay, this is a reality right now. And right and make the steps to change it or to step into that light, as you say. It's not about it's not about having to diet to lose weight, right? It's about what are the habit changes? What are the deeper things going on that are leading to that outcome and actually addressing that? We always say the conversation is who do you have to become to get out of this financial funk, whatever it is? Who do you have to become, not what do you have to do, right?
100%. There's a lot of what to do's, and a lot of people. I can give a hammer and a drill and nails and schematics to a toddler, and the toddler cannot build a house. But to give those same things to a construction worker, they're building a house. What? They're just a different identity, right? They're somebody different, we'll call it. And the idea is that when I say you can't have a dream or you can't attain or sustain a dream above your current identity, well, that identity does certain things instinctually. The way they perceive money, the way they engage with people, the way they handle it, the split second decisions. My wife is different with money than I am. I can't get myself into her headspace. She wants to return things that cost $2.50. Blows my mind. It's more in gas to get there. But her identity with money is different than mine, right? And the reality is like if I want to have what she has or operate like she does, I would have to start thinking like her. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's a different level of identity. It's a different way of viewing it. So what I go is if that's the dream you want, the aspiration, the goal, you got to ask yourself, what kind of identity has that? And it'll inform you of things that you aren't currently doing. And the thing is, if you aren't doing those things, what makes you think you get to have or keep those things? Right. So, what I look at is if you have this goal of saving a certain amount of money or you want to make a certain amount of money, there are going to be certain habits and actions and conversations and tactics and strategies that come along with that identity that has those things. And all you have to look at is go, I don't feel like that person now. So what I have to do is my own dark work in the direction of the actions and the habits that that person does. And slowly you find yourself elevating to that. Because at some point in time, we were people that go, oh, I don't drive. If you're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, now I go, no, I drive. I'm a driver. I drive cars all the time, every day. I take my kids to school, right? But at some point in time, I didn't identify with that. What did I do? I had to get in the car, learn the process, hit the brakes, get the gas. Oh my gosh, other people on the road. Like, and eventually I could drive fast, do my thing, right? we all have that same progression somewhere else in our life. We don't apply the concept and logic to the next part of our life usually.
Absolutely. And it's the same thing of you look at someone who's fit and you say, well, what do they do every day? They eat right, they exercise, whatever it is.
Mhm.
And it's pretty straightforward. The difference is you can see the result in in sometimes those cases, but a lot of the times you can't see the millionaire, the billionaire. It's like, well, what is it about them? What is it about their identity? And a
Yeah,
lot of it is unpacking that too, because you may also think they have the horns, right? They're evil. Like, who do I
yeah.
have to become in order to reach that status? It also depends on how you identify that person and how you perceive them.
True, it very much so does, because
Yeah.
you might also look at things. This is why I call it respecting the light, 'cause there are people that are shining in the light, and what happens is when you see them in the light, you can do one of 2 things. You can look at them and go, "Man, this person's amazing. I'm seeing what they're doing. I need to operate more like this." Or you can go, "Oh, they just did this. That's just that person. I would never do it like this, and they got it the wrong way." And it's the people they then you poke, and so now what you do is you never find the lessons within what they did to get there. And so, like, there's a long conversation we have, but it's all in that same bubble of
Hmm.
understanding that here's what I think about money. I heard this one time. Somebody said they call it currency because it has to go out into the world, whether it's energy or money to the world, and then flow back to you. If you
Right.
don't put anything out, the current doesn't come back. And I look at money even in my world now, like I'm not a money driven person. I'm a value driven person. And I made an active choice for this because I started noticing the people that I found that made great money, they weren't evil. In fact, the vast majority were not bad people. I'm talking probably 95% of people I've met that have money, solid, amazing humans. I go, this is completely opposite from what I grew up thinking. What am I watching? And I would pay attention. I go, you know what? Money doesn't accidentally enter their hands. Never does. It
Oh,
doesn't accidentally stay in their pockets. What happens is they give an amazing amount of value in some manner, and the world says thank you by giving them revenue, money, income, right? So if
yeah.
they did something awesome, the world says thank you for this awesome thing you made. It's worth more than the money in my pocket. And then that's how it works. And so I'm not accidentally giving my money to the Joe Blow on the street. If somebody hits me in the face, I'm not saying thanks for the black eye. Here's $20, you know? Like, there's things that I'm looking at and there's
Exactly.
joy there, and
Yeah.
so that was the kind of framing I looked at. I go, "Okay, if that's the case, well, how do I do more of that?" And then keeping it's all the thing. My son's coming here because 'cause we're late for a thing. "You're late, bro. We gotta do it later, son." So, like, the other part of it is the thought that if I'm showing up in the world and I wanna keep money in my bank account, I have to go, all right, what do I have to do identity wise to make these right decisions? If I make decisions like I was when I was broke, right? Well, then what happens? I see this thing come across and I go, I want that. I buy that. I buy that and I buy that. And next thing I know, I'm like, well, how come I'm broke? It's well, because you had the same spending habits when you weren't making more money. If you didn't change them when you made more, you're just spending more as you make more. And there's no better. And so I have little systems and things I put in place. Like for me personally, my dark work for saving money and not, blowing it all the time nowadays is if I'm scrolling on the internet and I see something, and I'm talking, I'll see things like, oh, it's only 10 grand. Like that's how my head goes. Stupid idea.
I
Uh,
love it.
I've spent like 50 grand on my home gym recently, like in the last year. It's stupid, but I use it. So it's a good investment for my family
Yeah.
and all of it. But that being said, I find myself in a situation where I go, now, you know what? This thing, I'm emotionally drawn to it. I like the idea of it. And I can think of all the ways I can use it, right? But I go, I do not want to make emotional buys anymore. So what I do is I send myself an email of this link with the card and everything. I leave it in my email and I walk away because it's not going to kill me if I don't buy it today or tomorrow, right?
Right.
I let it ride. And then what I do is every day I'm going through emails and I'll come to that email and I'm in a non-emotional space and I just see this email and I go, oh, that was a thing from yesterday. And I ask myself, do I want it? And whatever my first response is, that's what I do. You want it? Yeah, you still need that. You want it? No, I don't need it. I hit delete. And 89% of the time, it's like deletes nowadays. Like it's 100, not 100%, but I'm closer to 90% of like I put it in, I go, I don't need a bacon maker. No, I don't need a bacon maker. So I'm gonna let the thing ride and I delete it. But this was a habit I put into place because I noticed myself like still keeping the same spending habits as I made more, and that was problematic.
And coming from a place of logic as well as opposed to emotion. And back to what you were saying before about the currency, I've always said that it's a currency like a river. It flows. But I
Mhm.
always say it flows in the direction of values. Not
Yes.
value, but values. So
Yeah.
I say if someone's going to spend money on a home gym like that, it says something you value. If you're going to be spending money on vacations, that says something about what you value.
Yeah.
Convenience is a value.
Mhm.
Family is a value. So I always say that it will move in the direction of your values. And there are people with money who will spend a lot of money on things, but it speaks volumes about what they value, but also how they spend their time goes the same way. So
Yeah,
it's look at my bank account, look at my calendar, and you can tell me you can see what I value regardless of what I say I do.
100%. Oh, I agree. I have buddies who their first thing to do with them, like he's like, the first thing I do when I get a new, I've adopted this identity of doing this in my work too. The first thing he does when he brings new clients on, and he breaks down what they want, their goals, and everything, and he lets them unpack what they do, what they believe. He goes, "Okay, great. Next step is show me your calendar."
Yeah,
So he gets very transparent with who they are and what they're doing in real time now. And if they don't have a calendar put in place, he goes, okay, well then you don't value your time. So that's why you have this situation. Because if you valued your time, you'd organize it, right? It's like I say, if I
definitely.
value money, but I'm not tracking how many dollars I have in my bank account, doesn't make any sense, right? You track what you value. And then if he does have a calendar that's in place and doesn't show the things they're talking about, he goes, okay, so you're incongruent. You're going to have a problem if you continue to stay incongruent. So our job is to get you congruent. So we're going to organize this to actually be congruent with the words you just spoke to us. Now you have a different direction. It sets the tone for the next things moving forwards. But yes, you're 100% correct there.
Yeah, and I know Brennan talks about that all the time. I've been listening to Brendan's work, Brendan Burchard, for those who don't know, and he's always talking about the power of the calendar and how you
Yeah.
manage your time
Mhm.
being
Right now,
like the
connection,
ultimate
actually.
communicator.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that your son popped in, so I was actually going to ask you about this. How has doing the dark work affected, your family, right?
Amazing.
Like how are you changing the narrative for your kids, and what are you doing with them to instill some of these beliefs and help them with their own identity
Yeah.
development?
So my big thing is the dark work. I like it to be hard work. So my son just came in. It's his last day of school, and every weekday we get up at 6:25. We can take 6:30. We head out, do a hike up a hill. We do a gratitude circle. I can see miles around. We say we're grateful for the day. We hold hands, do a prayer. We come back down, do a cold plunge at 40-degree water for 2 minutes. We get out. We do a meditation for 10 minutes, and he's off for school.
Wow.
And somewhere along the lines, it became this thing where like, well, if he came in because he got up late today. I don't wake him up for it. Just so you know, like it's his. If he wants to do it, he's going to get up on time and do his thing. If he doesn't, then we just don't do it that day. I started in the beginning though. I kicked it off and I forced him to get out of bed. He hated the idea, and we took a hiatus. And then he realized what the benefit was. But here's you're asking what we do. My goal is to get him in a situation where he gets conditioned to doing hard things, and it doesn't feel as hard as it would the first time he did it. And I realize that life is comprised of a bunch of just hard things that look easy because some people are stronger, right? My life is action wise not vastly different from most people, but I do more of the actions because they feel lighter because I am stronger. And it only happened by doing the dark work, the things I conditioned myself to, the habits I have in place to where in the beginning it was hard to do. Now it's hard not to do it. And so with my family, like I have a close relationship with my son that I didn't have prior to doing this. With my daughter, with my wife, we have, conversations. It's essentially all the things that are difficult in the background that nobody does, I do. And I do it because of two things. One, because there's a genuine benefit to me having great relationships with the people in my homes where I could take a trip and I love being around every single one of them. I could spend private time with every single one of them. We could have open conversations. We could be transparent. All these things can happen. The second part of it is it allows me to leave from a place of true internal congruence and confidence speaking about it. Like it'd be really bad if I was doing nothing in the background but talking about do it. Hey, everybody, do it because I do it, but I wasn't doing it. You'd know. You'd see it. You'd see it it would ooze through in the conversations you'd hear me have, my interaction with my family you might watch. But like when you see us, we live this, right? So I feel very comfortable talking about it. And I think that for me is what's been the biggest benefits is I'm living a genuine real life and then sharing from that life in a direction that I think some people also still want to go to because they also say the best people you're designed to serve are those who are where you once were. And so I'm still a genuine regular guy. I take my kids to school, I pick them up, I train them, I work all these things. But I'm doing it for them to get better, to understand it, to us to get better as a unit, but also to share with the world so the world can be better.
Love that. And on the going back to the subject of money again, because I thought this was really interesting. What are your kids' money stories?
Oh, they're
Or
different.
if
I got some.
and how they're different, but also where are they heading, do you think, in terms of that? Like, what was the trajectory you're either trying to set for them, or where are they heading in their own money journey?
Yeah. Well, kids that come from, we'll call it some level of privilege, they are punks, man. Yeah, it's an ententitlement I hate. I watch it on other kids and I'm watching on people and I've Like, I grew up poor, right? So when you
Mhm.
grow up poor, you wanna give your kids everything. You never want them to experience that, but I go, "Man, because of that, though, I got gritty. I learned the value of money. I learned different things about how to get it." And so my kids, like, what happened the other day? So, something happened recently with a couple of my kids, but this is something I learned years ago with my oldest, who's in college now. And in college, he has, like, good chunk of thousands of dollars in his bank account, which I didn't have when I went to college. And here's what the difference. One is his mom's a money hound, we'll call it. She's tracked every penny. I mean, it's amazing her mind, how it works. I'm not quite there. I don't desire to be, but I do not have any vices that force me to spend unnecessary amounts of money. I have nothing that so like I'll buy things, but they're family things. I'll buy like, oh, it's a really cool big blanket for the couch. I'm not out here buying Harleys and motorcycles and a bunch of Gucci belts, and I got to buy every Jordan. So thankfully I have no vices, so I don't my money doesn't deplete for no reason. So I'm good. But I didn't grow up like she did. So there's that part of it. But what happened is my oldest son, this was young. He was like maybe 9, 10. We went to a baseball game or something. After the game, went to a park, and then we left the park. He left his $300 of baseball equipment at the park, and he goes, "Ah, it's okay. We'll get more." And my whole body shriveled. I go, "Oh my gosh, this kid he's super entitled. He doesn't understand the value of money." So I go, "How do I fix this for him?" And so I did this one thing for him. I said, "Hey, son, we're gonna sit this on down. Just, it's about $10 is minimum wage. And so I'm gonna give you $10 minimum wage, but you're gonna buy that bag back. You're gonna do the work to earn that bag." He did 30 hours of work, genuine 30 hours. I'm talking, I tracked every minute of it. When he was done doing that, oh, he had this inset emotional connection to the value of money. So that now, like, he hates spending money on anything that is not necessary because there's an emotional tie to, "Ooh, that's $10. That's an hour of life?" So I gave him this connection point, and so he's great with money. It's actually awesome to see how he manages and makes it and does his things, and my twins, they had the same thing as him. I did the same thing with them. I found out when my son, for some reason at school, the one that came in here a minute ago, playing around at school, he ends up like shoulder, barreling into a bathroom stall in the bathroom, destroys all the bathroom stalls. So I got to pay for the bathroom stalls. It's like $100 to fix the brackets that he broke. So I let him know. All right, cool. We got 10 hours. He's the ADHD kid. He hates doing anything that takes any time. The dude he doesn't like taking showers because they take too long in his head. It's the craziest thing. And so now I go, okay, I'm gonna break it down. So for him, same thing. He broke it down. He did 10 hours of work. For him, it was like 100 hours in his brain, and he now understands the value of money. So like their stories are a little bit vastly different from mine, but while they can pretty much have anything they want, they understand and appreciate it now. Now the good thing is we don't buy our kids Jordans. They don't even desire them. We're not into fashion and clothes. Like we don't have anything that we're not those people. We're athletes. We spend money on food and training, and we do take trips. That's us. If you come to our house, it's super chill and low key. We're just not built that way. But at the same time, if like we need cleats or shoes, like, there's no problem getting that. Like we can get anything that's in our realm of what we need. But they also appreciate and understand that. And then also I have long talks with my son. Like I explained to him, there's like the amount of money that my wife and I make now. We give great value to the world. I explained to him like we make in a couple weeks or a month what people make in a year or 2 years. And I say, but you have to understand that is not easy. Like I explained to him what it takes to have built ourselves to be able to do what we do to make that kind of income in the world. I said, just this is if you want this lifestyle you have, you must adhere to the same kind of mentality that we do. So when I'm getting on you and I'm like talking to you like tough and trying to elevate you, it's not because I don't like you. It's not because I'm mad at you. It's because as a person who has an identity that is able to provide this for you, this lifestyle, I am presently and actively aware of when someone's operating below that level, when they're not doing things of integrity, or they're not doing things in alignment, or they're cutting corners on stuff. I see it. And my job as a dad is to point it out so you are aware of it and you can rectify it. Because if you don't, this lifestyle will not be your lifestyle 10 years from now.
Mhm. Absolutely. I have a similar experience too. I'm more like the second example. I could not be I could not be told that I had to do work when I was younger. And like they would say you can do chores and earn money to buy what you want. I would say I'd rather not buy anything than do the work.
Mhm.
So I was definitely defiant in that regard. My dad basically told me when the day I turned 14, he's like, go get a work permit, you're going to work. And
Good.
I was actually excited about it. I was excited to like feel like an adult and go earn my own money.
Right.
And as fast as it came in, that was the first exposure to, "Yay, I make this much money. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. I was supposed to make like $10 an hour," whatever. It was probably $7 an hour at the time.
Yeah.
$7 an hour. What is this?
Yeah.
Half of it's gone.
Yep.
And my dad was like, "Welcome to Texas."
Oh, yeah.
And it also teaches you a little bit about, oh, now you know how hard it is to not just make the money, but actually bring home that much money. And that was a huge perspective shift for me as well in learning how that actually works by feeling it. And I think that especially kids when you're growing up, it's so important to have them live that experience and really feel what it feels like to earn their money. Even though we talk about not trading time for money and not associating time for money, I think that appreciating what it feels like to trade your time for money is irreplaceable.
I agree. I think that's a big piece of it. Because at the end of the day, it's always your time. And doing I mean, for me, our family, we buy time. That's it.
Yeah.
I grab the vast amount. It's hard too because it took me a while to get this down too. There are a lot of people that listen and go, "Well, we were saying if I'm not an entrepreneur making a bunch of money, then my life sucks." Like, oh no, no, no. It just would suck for me. It has nothing to
Mhm.
do with you, right? My best friend in the world. He's a police officer. He loves his job. 2 days ago, I was telling my wife, I'm like, It's so weird that Jason knows, my buddy Jason." I said, "He knows where he's going to go to work 2 years from now. Like, he knows the exact place he'll be on a specific day and what time." The thought of that makes me throw up inside of my soul. Like, I'm like, "Oh," right? But he loves the idea of consistency and security. Like, that's what gives him peace so he can show up and be who he is. And I respect that. At this point, I respect it because he had an opportunity to do something different that would have quadrupled his income with a certain level of guarantee, we'll call it, and actually would have immediately started paying him more than what he has now. But he turned it down because he said, "I love my life. And I don't want to throw any rocks in it. I don't want to take that. I love, if I can do this for a lifetime, I'm at peace." And I go, "Man, I can appreciate that." A person who can be given an opportunity, but love his life enough to make a choice to not chase another one. And it wasn't out of laziness or anything. It's just like, I love this. I go, I get that. And I go, for me, the idea is I need variety, but I'm not as tied to the security part because I live so far below like my means. Intentionally, we do that. I'm not stressed or worried about money. If something broke loose or someone crazy, we're gonna be more than fine. So I'm like, if I do that, I'm good. I don't need that check every month to be the same amount kind of thing. I need to know that 2 years from now, I have no idea what my life's gonna look like because I love the idea of finding life as a present every day. Like this conversation today, this is like a new conversation. Have fun with a new person I get to talk to, right? I love this variety of my life. And that gives me the sense of self. Whereas for Jason, the idea of doing this thing different and then not having the same check makes him want to throw up in his soul, you know? So it's like there's this dance to it. And so I understand that people are built differently. But if you attach yourself to the idea of "Man, I want to have what maybe Anthony has, the variety, and then, that the whatever it is, beautiful. It's going to have to look like this for your life." But if you are a person that is looking at that going, "I like what they have and want what they have, but I'm built for the stability," then do the stability thing and find something that can make you just as happy without having to chase something that's outside the realms.
And on that note, right, how you've gotten to where you are now and if people aspire to be in your position, one thing I know that you focus a lot on is your speaking career.
Mhm.
And you're actually doing a bit of, I don't know a ton about it, so I'm going to ask you about it, but the services around developing speakers
Oh, yeah.
and helping people get to that place. Could you just talk a little bit about how you got into your speaking career, what motivated you,
Yeah.
and the key things that drove you to want to teach others?
Yeah, well, I've always desired to teach people stuff. I had, a fitness business, so I was always teaching. I think this is some part of me that loves giving information. I think it ties back to not feeling like I mattered very much as a kid growing up, so I like the world to like me. And there's part of me that goes, "That's not a good thing to have as a trait." The other part of me goes, "Why not? If I'm serving people, right? If it's good for everybody involved, give as much as I can for the thank
Yeah.
yous." And so that's part of why I teach. But then I find that I only like to teach things that I know really well. Like if I don't know it very well, I don't feel confident saying, "Pay me for this." And so over this journey of life, I got into this realm of just living life and navigating hardships, so called unintentionally. And then I found that there's value in that I could talk on the stage and share it. People got value from it. So I go, "Oh, interesting." And so I leaned into an area I didn't know existed until maybe 2014 and then expanded into it because I do dark work well. So it's like, "Oh, this is what it looks like to have that. This is the kind of things I do. Let's do more of that." And so I started doing more of it in the business side. The human of me has always kind of developed the way that it's developed. And so I attached the skill sets to the humanity of me, and it became this cool brand of I live this. Here's what I do. And so in the process of it, I would just teach and talk and coach different things, but never really talked about the way I built the speaking business because my mind was like, everybody must do the same stuff as on a stage. And so I built my brand to where I charge 25,000 to 40,000 a keynote now. And I realized that that's not the norm. Like that's not what everybody's doing. And I go, why not? So I started looking around and seeing like I do a lot of things nobody else does. And I go, is it bad if I teach them? And I go, well, actually I can't be on every stage and I can't take a fee below mine because it messes my fee integrity up. So I go, I could actually help a lot of people climb because I'm sure if somebody was getting 5,000 a speech, that's a game changer for life. It was for me when I was at that level. So I go, why don't I just teach what I did? And so I got asked a bunch and kept turning it down. And eventually was like, all right, let me see if I can put this together and started putting things together and noticed that I had this really refined system I was operating without paying attention. I'm a guy like if it annoys me, I systemize it so it's not annoyance anymore. Right. I didn't realize there was
Same.
like undocumented systems sitting around place and I go, holy crap, it's all here. The way that I onboard, the way that I talk to people pre-event. Like I used to get in pre-event calls and like I hate the way they're asking random questions. How can I just have a flow of questions? So these questions inform me in different ways and I can make a different keynote that I was like, all right, I want to change the keynote because people keep asking for a new keynote. I don't want to keep making one from scratch every time. How do I make it modular to adjust? So I built this whole keynote design system. So all these little pieces, and I go, how do I get more stages? Because I got this great system. How do I get myself on more stages reliably? I hate the feast or famine process. And so I was like, okay, let me create a system for that. So I made a bunch of systems and then started running them and realized if I package these, they could be of value. So I started teaching people how it works and designed a really cool process called Speak to Freedom. It's our formula that gets you to get in the position of getting on more stages and then be able to get great on those stages. And if you progress it properly, you not only just speak, but you also coach and consult. It's a big piece of the spin up of the whole business as a whole. And so, yeah, that's a whole separate business that I try to keep in a position where it's not the forefront of what you see because I don't want the Amazons, the PayPals, the companies that book me to go, oh, he's just a speaker coach. That's all he's doing. They need to see that I'm a brand that teaches and does my thing. And that way doesn't kind of, kind of overshadow. And so I have it as a back kind of side. There's a couple links you'll see on a site or ads that you might see because you've said somewhere I like to speak, right? So that's where you'll find it. But then also, I want people who do come across me in the world of, hey, could be a speaker coach for me to go, oh, this isn't a guy who used to speak a decade ago and used to make a bunch of money. No, he does this now. He's in real time doing his thing. And so it allows him to have a lot more, I would say, faith in the fact that I can help him because they're seeing me live this in real time. So that's what's been a big push and it's been fun to watch it all kind of unfold in a really at first it was organic and then it became this like no, I really got to build this because if I do this right, I can help a lot of people with it. So we've actually built this thing out pretty well. We've got a really like if I'd have had this program 5 years ago, I'd have double the fees I am now. It's one of these things I go, damn, if I'd only had this earlier. So it's
Yeah.
exciting. I enjoy the program amazingly. Yeah.
It's like one of my mentors, Rory Vaden, once
I
said,
know, right?
he always says, it's your best position to serve the person you once were, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. So you're serving 5 years ago, Anthony, going, God, if I only had this recipe, I would have nailed this so much sooner.
Yeah.
And people need that. People need the head start, the shortcuts, and the ways to get to where they want to go faster,
Mhm.
but without missing out on what we talked about earlier, which is who do you need to become to command those fees? Who do you need to become in order to show up that way? There's only so many shortcuts that will get you tactically to the place you wanna be, but you also have to catch up with, is this who I want to become in order to drive that forward?
Yeah, 100%. Another great question too. Because there's also when you start looking at people, you might find there are two people living the similar lifestyle income wise and one person might be more in line with your values and one might not be. And it's okay to say, you know what, I can respect that you've done the work to get there because I know that it wasn't easy. But you know what, I don't want to live my life in that manner, right? There's some people that make as much money as I and my wife may make, right? And they're big on fast cars, private jets, Louis Vuitton, everything. And there's nothing, I'm taking nothing from that because that person that they had to toil and fight and claw because I know money doesn't come easy. I don't care what you want to do, it doesn't come easy to you. So I go, I respect that. But you know what? That's just not the lifestyle I want to live. And me choosing a different doesn't mean I'm discounting that. It's not an attack on that in any way. It's just saying I choose differently for my life and I respect you over there and I do mine. So as you see people living the life you may want to live, take a look and go, do I respect that person? Is that a person whose life I would feel comfortable settling into? And if it is, go after that, regardless of what anybody else says. Because if somebody comes to me and goes, man, I want the car and the Gucci belt, bro, go get it. 1000%. If that's gonna set your soul on fire, go get it. I'll help you go get it. Like just I'll help you get what it needs to be done to have that to buy and purchase those things. but it's just not going to be the values that I hold for myself. There's again, nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah, there's no reason to project someone else's values on yourself or assume that they're doing that or that somehow their choices are making a statement about yours.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
completely unrelated. Totally agree, Anthony. I just want to say thank you for this conversation. Really appreciate it. And we're going to tie this up with tell everyone where they can find out more about you, where you're going to be, all the things Anthony trucks is at your website, right?
Yeah, if you go to anthonytrucks.com, you'll find all the stuff that I do, which the idea is it's not a lot of stuff. I do two things very, very well. That's it. I teach how to be able to build a business like mine, and then I show my business that I'm running in real time. So if you want to be able to rewire yourself and elevate your identity through a dark work experience, that's what we do. If you're a person that goes, I want to build a business in the realm of speaking, coaching, consulting, that's what we do. Outside of that, I'm not going to teach you about money. I'm not going to teach you about parenting. It may work its way in, but I do two things stupidly well because that's where I can deliver value the best.
And that's a lot to take away for us, those listening. Listen to that. A couple of things stupidly well that will get you success. Thank you so much, Anthony, for hopping on the show today.
Very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Did you enjoy this episode but want to explore more on this topic? Or maybe you have questions for me and our guests. One of the best parts of doing this podcast is interacting with you in the Keep What You Earn community. This community is a completely free resource for you to ask questions, chat about our episodes, and to connect with us on our monthly calls. Yes, all for free. We host this community on a platform called Circle, so you won't be bogged down by Facebook notifications or get your posts buried in the mix. So click the link in the show notes to join us in the community right now. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and review on your podcast platform. This small action goes a long way for podcasters to get our message heard by more business owners just like you. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to information about our guests and ways to get in touch with me. We'll see you on the next episode.